History remembers superpowers as unstoppable giants. Nations whose armies marched like thunder and whose flags stretched across oceans. But there is another story buried beneath the dust of empires. A story of moments when the giants of the world, Rome, the Ottomans, the British Empire, the French Republic, the United States, the Soviet Union, came face to face with Africa, and nothing unfolded the way the superpowers expected. Because every time Africa met a global empire, the encounter reshaped both, sometimes through war, sometimes through trade, sometimes with resistance so fierce it stunned the world. These moments changed borders, fractured dynasties, toppled kings, and redrew the map of the modern age. This is the untold clash shaping empires. The story begins long before gunpowder, before cannons, before Europe carved its way across the seas. In the blazing heat of North Africa, Rome, the greatest superpower of the ancient world, advanced toward the kingdoms of the Sahara, believing itself invincible. Legionnaires marched in perfect formation, their armor gleaming beneath the sun. Yet the desert had no fear of them, and the cities south of the Mediterranean would not bow easily. In the 1st century BCE, when Roman troops pursued their enemies into Numidia, they encountered warriors who fought like shadows. Numidian cavalry, the famed horsemen of Massinissa, moved faster than Rome could adapt. They struck, vanished, and struck again. Roman generals wrote in frustration that Africa produced soldiers who seemed to ride with the wind itself. The Romans won battles, yes, but they lost time, resources, and legions to a land they could never master. Behind Rome's walls, senators whispered the uncomfortable truth: this continent is not ours to conquer. Centuries later, as medieval Europe struggled, Africa flourished with its own centers of power. The Ghana Empire ruled trade routes of gold and salt. Mali's kings commanded wealth so vast that when Mansa Musa traveled through Cairo, the value of gold collapsed for years. The Swahili coast hummed with international commerce, linking Africa to Persia, India, and China. But every superpower dreams of expansion. China's great gamble. In the 1400s, Admiral Zheng He, commander of the world's largest fleet, sailed down the East African coast. His treasure ships dwarfed anything Africa or Europe had seen. But instead of conquest, China chose diplomacy, trade, and respect. The Mogadishu Sultanate received envoys. The kingdom of Malindi sent giraffes to Beijing. And for a moment, the meeting of Africa and a superpower became peaceful, an exchange of culture rather than a clash of swords. Yet while the East welcomed partnership, the West sharpened its knives. By the 15th century, European superpowers, Portugal, Spain, later Britain and France, arrived not with gifts, but with cannons. They believed Africa would fall quickly, just as the Americas had. They were wrong. The Kingdom of Congo strikes back. When Portugal attempted to dominate West Central Africa in the 17th century, they faced the brilliant Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Matonga. She negotiated like a statesman, fought like a general, and manipulated European politics with the precision of a diplomat trained in Lisbon itself. For decades, she stalled Portuguese expansion, forcing the superpower to reconsider its ambitions. She became a symbol of resistance, an African ruler who stood toe-to-toe with empire. Ethiopia versus the Ottoman Empire. At the Red Sea, another giant rose, the Ottoman Empire. Confident, after centuries of conquest, the Ottomans believed the Christian kingdom of Ethiopia would crumble. But in the highlands, they found warriors who used the mountains as their shield. The Battle of Daga saw Ottoman-supported forces crushed in a stunning reversal, one that preserved Ethiopia's independence and kept the empire from advancing deeper into the continent. Wherever superpowers marched, Africa reshaped their plans. The 19th century became the most decisive clash ever between Africa and the superpowers. European empires, now industrialized, armed with repeat rifles and machine guns, believed they could redraw the continent like lines on a map. But on the ground, the story was different. The Zulu break the British line. In 1879, at Isandlwana, the British Empire, the most powerful force on earth, suffered one of its worst defeats. Zulu regiments, using a combination of disciplined formation, encirclement tactics, and unmatched battlefield coordination, overwhelmed a modern army armed with rifles and artillery. The British were stunned. Newspapers around the world struggled to understand how an African army had destroyed a European superpower's column in open combat. For a moment, the myth of European invincibility shattered. The Asante Empire's fire and gold. In West Africa, the Asante Empire fought Britain across 5 major wars. They built roads, forged their own weaponry, and developed a centralized political system that rivaled European administrations. British generals wrote in private letters that the Asante were a nation built for war. It took decades for Britain to break their resistance, and even then, the empire never truly subdued the Asante spirit. The empire that beat a superpower. Ethiopia versus Italy. The most iconic moment arrived in 1896 at the Battle of Adwa. Italy marched into the Horn of Africa expecting an easy victory. Instead, they faced a unified Ethiopian army under Emperor Menelik II. Hundreds of thousands of warriors from every corner of the empire. Ethiopia encircled the Italians, crushed their divisions, captured thousands of prisoners, and shocked Europe with a decisive African victory over a modern superpower. The world map shifted that day. Black people across the globe, Caribbean intellectuals, African American activists, colonized Africans looked to Ethiopia as proof that empire could be resisted. By the mid-20th century, Europe's dominance weakened. 2 new superpowers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union, and Africa, once treated as territory, became a battlefield of influence. Neither wanted colonies, they wanted allegiance. The struggle for the Congo. After independence in 1960, the Democratic Republic of Congo became the center of a geopolitical storm. The US backed Western-aligned leaders. The USSR supported revolutionary movements. Belgium sent troops. The UN deployed peacekeepers in its largest mission to date.
The assassination of Patrice Lumumba, one of Africa's brightest political minds, symbolized how far superpowers were willing to go to maintain influence. The Congo became a mirror, a reflection of how global ambition could tear a young nation apart.
Ethiopia versus Somalia, when superpowers switched sides. In the Horn of Africa, the Ogaden War of 1977 created one of the most shocking diplomatic reversals of the Cold War. Somalia, long backed by the USSR, launched an invasion of Ethiopia. But mid-war, the Soviets switched sides, pouring weapons, advisors, and Cuban troops into Ethiopia. The United States, seeing an opportunity, began supporting Somalia. The result was a war where two African nations fought each other while superpowers played chess in the background. Hundreds of thousands were displaced, borders hardened. The legacy lingers even now.